In the age of AI, it seems that authenticity matters more than ever. But at least for me, when I think about how to be authentic as me, Sam, a human, I think of it as separate from however I interact with AI or whatever information I pretty much willingly give over to AI. Our guest today, Allison Shapira, doesn't think that we have to sacrifice our cake. We can eat it too. In her work for over 2+ decades, and now with a new book coming out, she makes a very strong and compelling case for how humans, particularly leaders in any sectors, can embrace AI to make them more authentic, not less. Let's get going. Welcome back to DC Decoded, where we break down what happens when artificial intelligence meets the nation's capital. I'm your host, Sam Lee. Today's guest is Allison Shapira, a former opera singer turned global expert in leadership communication and best-selling author. She is the founder and CEO at Global Public Speaking, where she has transformed how leaders communicate on the global stage for over 2 decades. She also teaches at Harvard, helping leaders speak with clarity, confidence, and authenticity. Now, she's writing a new book titled AI for the Authentic Leader, How Gen AI Can Make Us More Human. Allison, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sam. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So you're a best-selling author, Harvard lecturer, entrepreneur. Tell us how you went from graduating Boston University with a major in Italian language and minor in opera performance to now founder and CEO of Global Public Speaking.
Growing up, all I wanted to do was be an opera singer. And then I competed, I trained, I went to a performing arts high school. Then when I got to college, I got disillusioned with the field of opera. It was very political, which was surprising for opera. It wouldn't be surprising for anyone living in DC. But I realized it was a very subjective field. And I wound up leaving and never thought I would do anything with my musical background. But in my first job out of college, I was actually a diplomatic speechwriter. And I realized that my musical training made me a great speaker and an even better coach, because as singers, when we're not speaking, we're critiquing other singers. And so while I was speechwriting and coaching diplomats, I realized I had a very fine ear and eye to pick up on those subtle shifts that we would make with our body or our voice that would affect how we're perceived by others. So using those surprising skills in a new field, I wound up launching my own company, teaching what was first public speaking, then became communication, and is now a leadership practice.
Right. And there's one aspect of, I think, your leadership work that is on a lot of people's minds these days, which is artificial intelligence or AI. Recently, I saw you had defined AI as not just an engineering tool, but a general purpose technology. This was part of a longer post you had written titled Why Liberal Arts Majors Will Thrive in the Age of AI. So let's take that step by step. Break that down for me. First, define your definition of AI for the audience. And then second, why you see liberal arts majors as poised to threat.
And it wasn't just to justify my liberal arts education to my parents. I feel like I've moved beyond that.
Yes,
there are many definitions of artificial intelligence. I define it as the ability of machines to perform tasks once thought only humans could perform. And as those machines are performing more and more tasks we thought were uniquely human, like demonstrating empathy or creativity, it's causing us to rethink what it means to be human. What is it that makes us special and unique as humans? And so I've been thinking a lot about the skill sets that we need in this new era. And a lot of people are being asked the question, if you have kids who are going to college, what would you tell them to study? Okay, I might not tell them to study Italian literature, but the tools, the skill sets of the future that I keep hearing again and again are the skill sets that we learned as liberal arts majors. Generalists who learn a little bit about everything, and then we can connect the dots on subjects from philosophy to comparative literature to intro to natural sciences. And so I think that well-rounded education that I received as a liberal arts liberal arts major actually gives me a competitive advantage because I'm not siloed. I'm not deep in the weeds. And I'll never forget doing a program at the Brookings Executive Education where a woman stood up and she said, I'm a scientist. All I can see is what I don't know. She kept getting stuck in the limits of her knowledge, whereas a liberal arts major goes through life not knowing most things. So we're used to not knowing, and we actually look at that sense of curiosity and wonder and interdisciplinary thinking as a strength. And that positions us to be more well-rounded when it comes to how are we going to apply this general purpose technology, not just to our narrow field, but to everything that we see or do.
And you're speaking from the perspective of somebody who still has ties to the classroom in 2025 through your lecturing at Harvard. So I'm curious, you just finished, as you were telling me, a semester at Harvard. How have you been incorporating first talking about AI with your students, and then secondly, using AI in the classroom?
I've been using AI in the classroom for a number of years, even before we had generative AI available to use. Actually, about 5 years ago, app developers started to come to me to test their public speaking apps, and I noticed more and more of them were incorporating AI. And one particular company called Udly, with a Y, it was an organization that caught my eye, not just because they were using AI to help people improve their speaking, but because using their AI platform, you could upload a speech or record a speech of yourself and then get those AI analytics, but you could also share your speech with another human, a coach, an expert, an advisor, a friend, and then get human time-stamped feedback. And it was that combination of AI plus human on a single app that made me want to work with an organization like that. So I started to use those tools in the classroom. And then as other tools became available, I would experiment with them. And most recently, the Harvard Kennedy School actually created something called Ping Pong, which is like a series of customizable bots, or you would say custom GPTs, that faculty can create for their classroom. And so I wound up creating 3 custom GPTs for students. One was, what topic should I choose? Because students never know which topic they should choose for their speech assignment. What would Allison say? Which is a chatbot trained on the feedback that I look for when giving a speech or when evaluating a speech. And then a new and experimental tool on bringing out your authentic voice.
Wow, that is definitely feeling like a classroom in 2025. So I'm glad you are informing people of what's going on. I'm curious, you mentioned 5 years ago, you had these AI app developers coming to you. I have to ask, what was the worst one that you experimented with?
I wouldn't remember them if they were the worst one, but I'm known in the field of public speaking. So people would reach out and say, can you use this? Can you use that? There were great apps that were using gamification to help people reduce their filler words. There are some really clever apps out there.
Right. Only positives here. I love it. Let's talk about DC now. So I think one thing when I think about speakers is at these events, it's not just about you in the audience or you on the stage. It's also about the networking that happens between events, at the bar, after the event. And DC has a very particular networking culture. I recently saw a post and the user had written on LinkedIn, I've lived in DC for a decade. I've been to dozens, hundreds, of networking happy hours, and most of them suck. So I'm curious, what unique characteristics have you observed from DC's networking and speaking culture that might be different to other cities?
We know, anyone who lives in this town knows that relationships are our currency here in DC, or whether you consider DC or Washington, relationships are the currency that we use. And so we network for a living. I like to joke that I met clients dancing tango at the 18th Street Lounge because it turns out a lot of world bankers dance tango, and that's how I started doing work with the World Bank. So it's an interesting connection. We meet people anywhere. As you know, you could be sitting in a bar next to someone who you've just applied to work with, which is why you always have to be really nice in public in DC.
Important.
But what I notice is there are a lot of really bad elevator pitches. And I used to teach the art of the elevator pitch, and I got so fed up with it because it's people just spitting out their resume without getting to know you. We all know those people who'll introduce themselves, but they're really looking over your shoulder, trying to find someone else more important to talk to. Yep. And so I got so fed up with that kind of transactional networking, and I was bored even by what I was saying, that I started to come up with a better way of introducing myself. And now I call it the anti-pitch. So it's not an elevator pitch. The anti-pitch is a one-sentence personal introduction of who you are as a strategic conversation starter to get the conversation going. And the way I teach it is I tell people to go from B to C. I have a background in, and I'm currently. And when you use that expression, I have a background in, you mentioned something unique about your background, and I'm currently, what are you working on that you want people to know about now, whether it's a project or a job search? And that's the one sentence personal introduction I teach people to use. And I actually created a custom GPT to help people come up with and test their anti-pitch.
Great. And how did you come up with that concept, B2C background, and then what you're currently working with?
A lot of uncomfortable trial and error. I mean, you'd meet someone and you'd introduce yourself and it wouldn't work. You'd bomb and you'd think, what did I just do?
I'm also curious, how should DC leaders in this day and age balance leveraging AI tools while maintaining authentic communication styles? I would estimate that you probably think you don't need to give up one or the other. But, I think that's a valid question that a lot of DC leaders are thinking about. How do you leverage AI tools but still maintain your authenticity?
I appreciate that people are even asking that question as opposed to just outsourcing their writing to ChatGPT or any other AI tool that they might be using. And what I realized when talking to my clients who are very senior executives at large companies is they just weren't using AI at work at all. And one of the reasons was they work for very regulated industries like the financial services sector. They can't use AI at work. They're not allowed to, even though they're starting to develop their own tools. Or maybe they thought, oh no, we outsourced that to the IT team. They're on it. As opposed to realizing as leaders, they had a responsibility to learn how to use these tools themselves so that then they could guide their teams on how to use it. And they were afraid that if they used it, they would be less authentic. And that's when I realized I had a unique lesson that I could teach them because I specialize in helping people find their authenticity, whether they're in politics or business or the nonprofit sector. Our authenticity strategically is what helps us connect with other people, which builds trust. It's the most powerful way to build trust with people. And I realized as I was using AI tools that there are ways in which we can use these tools to bring out our authenticity, to tap into our authenticity as opposed to just outsourcing it. And that's why I started writing this book about how we use AI while maintaining our authentic voice. And in fact, making that voice even better because the AI can serve as a gentle, patient reminder, not just of who we are, but who we are at our best.
One of the most common themes that have come up in the podcast so far is we have people who are in the policy space in DC, business space, nonprofit space. We're trying to cover the gauntlet. And that was actually going to be a follow-up. You just mentioned that whether you're in policy, business, or nonprofit, that authenticity matters. But especially on the topic of AI, both in terms of internal use at your company or government building versus external, there seems to be so much tension and conflict between policy sectors, business sectors, and others. So would you argue that when you're talking to leaders of these different sectors, it's still a through line of trying to be authentic, or doesn't matter the different ways that a policy leader might use AI versus a business leader? How important are those differences?
The similarities are actually across all the industries. AI can help us understand how our message is going to land for our target audience. So for a business leader, it's based on their client persona or based on their target market or their team. How will this message land with them? For a policy leader, if it's somebody drafting legislation, how will the person I'm drafting it for respond to it? How will individual lawmakers in their districts, how will they respond to it? So the use cases, I would say the intention of using AI is similar. The specific use cases are different.
Got it. And then across the board, then who do you see based on like your clients and leaders you've worked with, like who which leaders are using AI the best for their speaking and their communication? Like, just give us some examples of what's working.
The reason I'm writing the book is because not enough leaders are using it or even realize that they can use it. So the goal of the book, and it's a short book, it's intended to be read by a busy reader on a 2-hour direct flight. So my goal is that they read this and they start using it.
Got it. Yeah, maybe that question was too idealistic, maybe a little too forward looking on that one. In February, at the Gen AI Collective, the DC chapter, we held one of our soiree events where they're more small scale, about just 20 to 30 people that we invite to bring a different range of perspective on AI. And the question that night was whether we thought AI was leading us towards a dystopia or utopia. So I'm curious, from your perspective and everything you've experienced, what do those two things look like for you? What scenario looks like where things don't turn out as ideal as we want? And then what is the most ideal?
Everyone is asking this question, and the recent paper I read, AI 2027, is showing you both of those scenarios. You get to choose your own adventure. I chose both, so I saw the utopia and the dystopia, and both are valid, both are possible. I think there's going to be some of both. I mean, we're already seeing how AI is helping people be more super empowered individuals who are learning new topics, the autodidact, the person who can learn other languages and learn other concepts through AI is incredible. And we're seeing the rise of superhuman persuasion. We already know language models are more persuasive than humans when they have information on the humans they're hoping to influence. And so this idea of what does it mean when we have non-human actors who can make the most persuasive case ever to us based on all of our data available. It's not the AIs that I'm worried about. It's the humans using those AIs for malevolent purposes. So we're going to see both concurrently. And the challenge now is that we have individual companies creating tools that will become the collective commons, the public commons. And so what kind of oversight do we want? Who oversees it and what decisions are made before we use it? And that's a great question for policymakers on both sides of the aisle here in Washington.
Yes, I agree. Also the AI 2027 research paper you reference is quite extensive and thorough, and I would recommend everyone at least take a glance at it. So let's talk just a bit more about your next book that will be coming out, AI for the Authentic Leader. And when you were announcing this book, you wrote that leaders face a choice when it comes to AI. Let technology dilute their voice or use it to sharpen their clarity, confidence, and impact. I believe AI can amplify your leadership, not automate it. Those two sentences, they were clearly very thought out. Those are very specific words to use: dilute versus clarity. Why do you focus on those words? Why do you think those are the most important ones for leaders to be aware of as they continue or start to use AI tools?
I chose those words because leaders are normally very intentional. So what gets you into positions of leadership is a level of focus and discipline and intention. And so I wanted to use words that no leader would want to be associated with, such as dilute. Who wants to dilute their effectiveness? So it was really a cautionary tale for those leaders who just say, have the AI write it for me, especially when it comes to our communications, because we can very easily use AI to draft a cover letter, as I saw when I was advertising for a new job, and all the cover letters I received were copy pasted from ChatGPT. I could tell by the way that they perfectly merged the job description with their background, and it was actually the human written cover letters that were quirky, that were different, that were more personal, that stood out, and the candidates behind them stood out as well. So I used it because I want leaders to know they can maintain a high level of excellence and intention, and they can use these new tools to be even more effective leaders. Because just because you're authentic doesn't mean you're effective. You can be authentically lazy. I'm authentically impatient. when someone wastes my time. That's not an effective leadership quality. So
Right.
how can, and what I've been thinking about is we talk about AI alignment. We want to align the AI to human values, but what are we doing as leaders to align ourselves to our own values and make sure we're living those values every time we have a difficult conversation or deliver a public message? And so that's what the book is intended to focus on. How do we align our leadership with our own personal and professional values?
Right. Authentically impatient is a beautiful phrase, by the way. I will be keeping that in my mind. That's beautiful.
You'll get it every day with me.
Well, how do you address concerns from leaders who believe that AI is even coming for their jobs? Just this week, Fiverr CEO Misha Kaufman, he sent a staff-wide email. Fiverr is one of the biggest freelancing platforms in the world. And it was a staff-wide email where he acknowledged that AI could even come for his job as CEO. So what should be the response to these bigger and bigger leaders frankly addressing the concerns that a lot of people have that AI could be replacing them?
I could see how the CEO specifically of Fiverr would feel that way, because if AI comes for the jobs that all those Fiverr individuals are using, then he doesn't have a company to manage. So I see it as a threat to the work that his company has built to address, which is very important work. So I see it in that specific company. In general, what I'm seeing is that AI is going to take on a few different predictable tools, whether they're the automated tools or the tools that are simply a series of tasks that need to be done in succession. I still see a need for human connection and human to human empathy, the relational energy that comes when humans gather together. I don't see that going away. I see that as being even more valuable than before. And so the leader's job is actually what the leader's job, which was always supposed to be, was to bring people together to achieve a shared vision. That role is still going to be critical. The leader is also going to have to reassure and guide their team through this time of transformation in human capacity and human connection and what the future of society looks like. So leaders are going to be more important than ever, and they're going to have to bring their A game, because otherwise they are going to get displaced.
Right. Ready for a rapid fire segment to close us out? All right. So in 1 to 2 sentences for the following questions. First, what's your favorite leadership book besides yours?
My favorite leadership book besides mine. I wish you'd given me a chance to think about these in advance, because I read like a book a week. So I have a lot of different leadership books. I really like David Gergen's Eyewitness to Leadership book. It's an oldie but goodie.
Okay. Most challenging audience you've ever spoken to?
Teenagers. There's a reason I work with adults. I really enjoy working with adults who've been burned in their communication, and so they're hungry for knowledge, versus teenagers. They're like, I don't need this. Make me understand.
Yeah, a little depressing for the future, but yeah, fair points. Well, they'll grow, they'll mature. They're teenagers. Most valuable lesson from your opera training that applies to public speaking. You kind of answered this one.
Most valuable lesson from your opera training: trusting your training and your preparation, and simply being yourself on stage to connect with the audience. Get out of your head, trust yourself, and connect.
On top of that, go-to technique for managing any pre-speech nerves.
Same as with opera. Pause and breathe, which is a philosophy for living life. The pause and breathe means pause before you speak or before you say that thing that you don't want to say because you're impatient, you're authentically impatient. Close your mouth, breathe through your nose, and then be intentional about the next thing that you say. And that micro pause will make you a better leader.
One piece of tech you can't live without. That's not AI related. Let's boundary it.
My headphones, so I can listen to podcasts.
Or what headphones are you using?
They're Apple EarPods.
Okay.
I wouldn't say they're my favorite EarPods, but this is the tech that I'm using. And then have a microphone.
Yes. Most recent podcast you listened to then?
I listened to the Hard Fork podcast. No, well, I mean, listen, I listen to 3 podcasts a day. So I'm listening to Diary of a CEO. I'm halfway through it. It's a 2.5-hour podcast about AI.
Perfect. And then last but not least, most impactful speaking engagement you've attended, not given, in DC, preferably.
It would be at Vital Voices, which is a nonprofit that empowers women leaders around the world in all sectors and all industries. And their headquarters are based here in DC. And I get to teach communication to these incredible women. And so they have programs here that I have attended, not taught in, but they always bring incredible women who are changing the world.
Amazing. Allison Shapira, where can people find your next book, AI for the Authentic Leader?
They can find me at AllisonShapira.com. That's Shapira with an A at the end, or connect with me on LinkedIn, and you will not be able to avoid it when the book comes out, because you will hear about it all the time.
And that's how you know it's good promotion. Allison, thank you so much for coming on DC Decoded.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Sam.
That's a wrap for this episode of DC Decoded. I want to thank Allison again for her time. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe to DC Decoded on your favorite podcast platform, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. If you found this discussion valuable, we love it if you left a rating or review. It really helps us attract new listeners. And if you're watching or listening on Substack, consider recommending us. It's free and will help you and people in your circle find us as well. For more on the DC chapter of the Gen AI Collective, upcoming events, and ways to get involved via collaborations or sponsorships, check out the links in the show description. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in 2 Wednesdays for the next episode.